Welcome to the EO Wonder podcast, where we share real stories from entrepreneurs who are shaping the way we work, live, and create. I'm Kalika Yap, and today I'm excited to introduce you to someone who is also a friend who's mastered the art of blending business success with creativity, Matt Dusig. Matt has an incredible background. He co-founded Innovate MR, a company that revolutionized how businesses gather insights, and under his leadership, Innovate MR grew into a powerhouse and was eventually sold for over $150 million. That's a huge accomplishment, but what's even more impressive is what he did next. With a degree in fine art and a lifelong love for photography, Matt decided to follow his creative passion. Today, he's the founder of Matt Dusig Fine Art Photography, capturing stunning images of wild mustangs, breathtaking aerial views of Hawaii, where I'm from, and travels around the world to do it. In this episode, Matt and I will talk about how he went from tech CEO to fine art photographer, where he learned how to build and sell a successful business, and how he's building a business around his passion. Whether you're scaling a business, exiting a business, thinking about a new chapter, or just curious about the creative process, Matt's story will inspire you to think bigger and explore what's possible. Let's jump in. Hi, Matt. Welcome to the EO Wonder
Hello.
podcast.
Good afternoon. Great to be here.
So I bumped into you, gosh, a couple months ago at the little beach house in Malibu, and you're just chilling. And then you told me that you sold your business a couple years ago for $150 million. And I was just like, oh my God, that's why you're chilling at the little beach house in Malibu. And we've known each other because our kids went to school at 7 Hours Elementary. And yeah,
Yeah, I think we met around 20, probably 14 or 15, somewhere around there.
yeah. And I'm so thrilled to hear about your success. And so that's why we're here today on the podcast.
Great. Thank you.
So tell us a little bit about your origin story. You came from a family of artists and also entrepreneurs.
Right. So my dad was a businessman. He didn't have a college education, but as someone growing up in Brooklyn, New York, and he just learned how to be scrappy and started out in sales and eventually worked his way up to buying his first business, which was a clothing store in downtown Los Angeles. And he had never owned a business before, but he was just figuring it out on the fly. And after owning that clothing store, he owned a few more businesses. And I think I watched him take risks. I watched him have failures and successes. And I think it normalized entrepreneurialism and it normalized risk for me. So I think that was a big deal on the business side. And I really watched carefully how he spoke to and dealt with customers. He was really good. His customer service skills were phenomenal. Very respectful, customers always right attitude. So that was inspiring to me. On the art side, my sister was very much into the arts growing up. My uncle was a professional photographer. My grandmother and grandfather were both artistic. My grandmother painted. My grandfather played the piano and did some sculpture, wood carvings. And so I saw a lot of people around me, being artistic. I wasn't, though.
You weren't, but you have a degree in graphic design.
I
Wait,
think I do. Today I am.
tell us.
Today. Well, I went off to college and thought, I didn't, like many people, I didn't know what I wanted to do. So I'll just, major in psychology. That's what my mom was doing. Okay, I'll pick psychology as a major. And along the way, I realized that I got really interested in computer animation. And this was the late 80s. And to do any kind of computer animation, you needed very large, expensive computer systems. But I thought, well, let me dive into the art department and use the computer systems for what was available at the time, which was mostly graphic design and some light Photoshop type tools. back then. And in order to get a major in order to get a major in graphic design, you had to actually take art classes. So photography, painting, drawing, illustration, sculpture. And while doing that, now I'm in my second year of college, is when I realized, oh, I can paint. Like I'm actually a really good painter. And I have some paintings on the wall here at the house. I'm actually working on a horse painting in the other room right now. And but as I to paint anything great takes a lot of time. And then when I went off to start a career, you could no longer really commit that level of amount of time for painting. And the faster creative outlet was photography. Grab your camera, pick it up, take a shot, do some editing, and not have to spend weeks on a painting. And so that's how I got more involved in photography.
I remember visiting your house, gosh, years ago, and you had some beautiful paintings, but it was more like a collage. Like, I think were you like layering different photos and they were more landscapes?
I've played with all sorts of things related to photos and photo collages, digital collages, physical print collages, and yeah, I like experimenting.
So while you're growing your company, and you've had several businesses as well too, but maybe you can take us through your business career. So you graduated, I think, from CSUN, right, with a degree in graphic design. How did you get into the entrepreneurial journey?
So right out of college, I got hired to be a graphic designer at a title insurance company. And it's not very exciting industry. It was financially rewarding, but it was not exciting. And I worked in title insurance for the first 5 years of my business career. But my best friend Greg and I, we grew up together. We were college roommates, and he had embarked on another journey in financial services. But neither of us were really happy around 1999. And we used to get together and brainstorm. Well, what if we could do this? What if you could do that? Mostly talking about tech products related to the internet, solely using a web browser, of course, at the time. And we had a kind of a what if moment that we then presented to his parents, and they offered us, a few $100,000 to go figure it out. Now, this was the early days of the internet, and we both realized that if we didn't just quit our jobs and go explore and find out what it could be, then we may have regrets.
And that, what was that first company?
So the first company was called GoZing, and it's a funny story because this was 1999. If you rewind to 1989, in our college dorm room, we were selling a product called Zing. And it was kind of a sports related product that you tied it to two trees. And without getting into too much detail, it wasn't great. But we tried to sell it and make some money, and it was called Zing. And now, 10 years later, we had this business idea of sending text messages to people on their cell phones with coupons of the day. So a coupon of the day could be, 11 a.m., you get a text message, come into Subway today, buy one, get one free. Or it's 2 in the afternoon, and you get a text message from the Los Angeles Kings saying, tickets are available for tonight's game, discounted 50% off, show your cell phone at the box office. So we have this idea for mobile advertising, mobile SMS marketing and advertising back in 1999.
Wow.
Yeah. And so zinging out messages kind of felt like it was right for our story because that was the same business name, but zing.com was taken, so we chose GoZing.
Nice. And then when did you start getting into surveys or making people to do stuff on the internet? Was that a
Right.
different business?
No, same business. So what happened is in exchange for getting promotional text messages on your cell phone, you would sign up, give us your mobile number, tell us what your carrier was. We needed your carrier name in order to actually send messages to you at the time. You
Wow.
couldn't just take a cell phone number. You had to. So, and in exchange for that, we were going to give you reward points for every message you received. So you would get points, and then you would actually get coupons to use as a discount if you went to these locations. And the business model was challenging because we were pushing a boulder up a hill at a time when nobody was doing mobile marketing or mobile advertising, and advertisers didn't quite grasp it at the time and didn't see the future. And then also, when you're doing any kind of large scale advertising, you need critical mass from an audience base. And we had 50,000 people in our database, but that's not enough to kind of like spread the country or even spread a city. Because if the 50,000 people were nationwide, how many were really in LA? And how many, could we target, to make an impact for Subway sandwiches, who was a big sponsor of ours at the time. We had 550 Subway stores in a pilot program, but we couldn't make a big enough dent. So the revenue wasn't, flying in. And at the same time, we stumbled into an introduction with a woman who was starting a market research agency online here in Los Angeles named Shelly Zalis, and she was had opened a company called OTX. And the idea that she presented to us was, wouldn't it be great if when people are exiting theaters, that we could get them to answer a few questions on their cell phone? And then you can get instant feedback about what they thought on opening weekend. And you didn't have to wait for data to be collected on paper and then brought back to the office and entered into a database, and then reports being spit out. If you could collect the information mobily, then you could essentially in real time potentially give reports to studios. That was challenging also, same reasons, critical mass and scale, but OTX was conducting surveys online too, just traditional surveys. They were pushing the boundaries because surveys had previously been conducted on paper, telephone, in shopping malls, but now they were moving it all online. And she said to us, it was actually her partner, Kristen, said to us, hey, do you think you can get some of the people in your database to take an online survey this weekend? Because the studios want real-time feedback about people, every weekend. And we said, well, we'll try. So we sent an email out and we offered $4 via PayPal if they took our survey this weekend. We were getting paid $10 for each survey. And to our shock, 3,000 of our 50,000 people took a survey. We got paid $30,000 over the weekend. And we said, new business model, let's do that again, because that
That
worked.
so how did you find her?
Um, we were working with a gentleman who helped us get our text messaging systems to work, to go from our databases and our systems to actually send out messages to cell phones in '99. And the gentleman who worked at that company, his wife was friendly with Shelly, if I recall. And so they made the introduction.
Because that's a pivot, what they
Mhm.
call a pivot now. And did you even second guess yourself, or you're just like, no, 30,000 in a weekend? Duh.
Well, we had raised some money for GoZing. Besides the money that Greg's parents had given us, we went out and did an angel round of financing from 30 or 40 people. And I think we raised all in like 1.2 million or 1.5 million. I can't remember exactly, but we had burned through almost all of that with staff and technology costs. Programming, computer programming and engineering back then, servers, so expensive. You had to go buy your own
So
servers,
expensive.
host them in a rack at some facility. So much more expensive than today for developing any kind of platform. So we burnt through that money. So now we had laid off our staff, half of our staff. We were doing anything we could to not have to close down the business, which meant Greg and I would have to go get day jobs. And we were designing websites in 2000, 2001. We were doing anything we could. We even did some like recruiting, HR, headhunting. And then when we stumbled into market research surveys, it saved the entire company.
I mean, and then so you said, Shelley, we want to do it again, or did she come back to you because it was successful?
It was successful. They had one other vendor that they were working with, maybe two, but one was really good. And they felt that that one vendor had a lot of leverage over them, so they needed a second alternative. So they pushed us to be their second alternative. It gave them leverage with pricing and with the other vendor.
You're their BATNA.
Exactly. Exactly.
So then what happened? How did it turn into Innovate MR?
Well, that was much farther along. We ended up selling GoZing in 2005 to that competitor that we were competing with. They went
Wow.
public and they had a mission to go acquire market share. So they bought our company in '05. We had
Yes.
a three-year non-compete. We dabbled in some other businesses at the same time. One of which could have been the billion-dollar idea, but we missed the mark.
Which
Uh,
ones?
it was '05, and we thought, wouldn't it be a great idea if people could store their files online?
Dropbox
Dropbox,
or
Box,
Fat Drive, or there were so many of them back then, but
Box.net.
right.
Now we all use Google
Box.com.
Drive.
Yeah.
And we built a business called File123 that had a lot of great bells and whistles. And we did ended up selling it, but it didn't turn into a big home run. But we had a 3-year non-compete from the time we sold GoZing. And when 3 years was up, we decided we were going to launch another business called USAMP. And we also had some friends that owned a venture capital fund. And pretty much over dinner, they were just like, "We'll give you $1 million to start this company." We hadn't even started it yet, and we're like, okay, we could take their money, or we could go, you know, try to find 40 other angels, 50 other angels to give us 20,000 each. And we decided to take their money and just run fast. And we built a very big company. That company, USAMP, which was in the same space of market research, grew from two of us in 2008 to 250 people by 2013, from zero in revenue to 50 million in annual revenue in 5 years. It was in one way, it was a huge success, but it ended up being a failure for us because we had raised numerous rounds of venture capital. And eventually, the VCs kind of soured on us, didn't think that we could continue to take the business in the right direction. I believe they didn't like the valuations of some of our competitors at the time, although that was really a snapshot in time because values did come back. So we got pushed out of our own company in 2013. And without a non-compete, because we didn't sell the business, or we just in January of 2014, we just said, let's launch another company.
Wow.
And so just got knocked down, got right back up and launched Innovate in 2014.
And less than 10 years later, you sold it for
8
$150
years
million.
later.
So you had you set yourself to be much different from your competitors. How did you do that?
Well, a lot of our competitors at the time were selling on price, and they weren't so much focused on quality. And we knew that there was a need in the market in the marketplace for quality. And we decided we were not going to be the low-cost leader, driving the industry down to, slim margins and lower value, lower quality. So we figured out a way to create a higher quality product than our competitors, proving that it was higher quality time and time again, but proof was in the pudding, that we were delivering data to our clients that they could analyze and determine was better than anyone else. And we were not cheap. And because we were not cheap, our margins were better. Our cash flow was better. And our ability to kind of reinvest and scale the company without raising money became very invaluable.
Yeah, you didn't want to go down that route again.
We had we had two people at the beginning of Innovate that were friends, one family member and one friend, that wanted to give us money. And we knew they were, not involved, passive investors, would hardly ask what was going on with their investment. So we took their money. I think that was $900,000 is how much we took. And we never raised another dollar after that.
Because you were pricing it right. But maybe you can just tell everyone what Innovate MR was doing, market
Sure.
research. Yeah.
So, and this is the same thing as GoZing and the same thing as you, Sam, which was that as companies were moving their market research online, they could program their surveys in tools like SurveyMonkey, or there were many other tools they could use to program their surveys, create the questions, create the answers, but they didn't have access to the audiences. So let's say you're Ford and you want to run a survey about electric vehicle owners, and you need to find people that own, Teslas and hybrid vehicles and Hyundai Ioniq and a whole assortment of cars. And then you want people with diverse kind of backgrounds, demographic profiles. So a spread of their age ranges, balanced genders, men and women, maybe geographic balancing. I need 1,000 people to take the survey. So I need it balanced based on the census. So I need more people in California than in Montana. I need more people in New York than in Rhode Island. So we would have to do all of this kind of creating what are called sampling frames to target the right people to participate and motivate these people to participate and take these surveys on behalf of our corporate clients. And if they took the surveys, then we got paid. And again, took a percentage of the pay and rewarded the people for their time in taking the survey. So it was an audience sampling business.
And you also focused your research on executives. Why was that so important?
Well, business professionals was a higher premium audience. If you want to find someone that wakes up in the morning and drinks coffee, super easy to find that person. And you can find them in every state, in every age range. And that would mean it's a lower priced product because it's easy to find. But if you need, someone who works in HR and is in charge of hiring in companies with over, 100 employees, then that's a more expensive product. And so we really worked hard to figure out how to find and reward and target those people.
And it was so successful because they actually spent time with you. Didn't you just say that they were also on Zoom with you, or not you, but your people?
Most of our surveys were just online and they don't actually talk to us. Innovate did acquire a business called Ivy Executive or Ivy Exec that does conduct market research surveys they don't need 1,000 people to take a survey, they need 5. And they need those 5 people to get onto a Zoom session and have a conversation for an hour. So yeah, that's part of Innovate's business today.
So earlier you talked about the importance of taking risk. Did you take any big risks with Innovate MR?
I mean, I think every day is a risk. Every time you hire a new salesperson, it's a risk, especially when you don't have financial partners to back you up. Every investment you make, every hire you make is coming out of your own pocket. We took risks by expanding the business, opening up offices in India, hiring people in London, being able to trust that, okay, we're going to hire a handful of people in London. There's no office there. There's no manager. And we're just going to, there's a manager in the US who oversees, but we're just going to have to trust that the people we're hiring know what they're doing, are motivated, and and fit the culture, really. But I don't know if there were any big major risks. Maybe I'm blanking on them.
So when you, Sam, found out that you started Innovate, were they just kicking themselves? Like, oh, we forgot the non-compete.
They sued us.
They did,
They
but
sued us.
they don't have a. Okay, so that's risky.
That is risk. It was that they sued us because the goal was to slow us down. And they knew that they could spend on lawyers as much as they wanted. And they thought they were going to drain us dry. Luckily, we actually had some corporate insurance policies, D&O and E&O policies that we had put in place that covered, except for a $50,000 deductible, covered two different law firms to defend us. And so USAMP, they weren't quite expecting that. So we weren't going away easily. And eventually they found a buyer to buy their company, or that my old company, and they had to drop the lawsuit in order to sell the company. So yeah, that was hard,
Yeah. Well, and
stressful.
for people who are listening, the acronyms DNO, Directors and Officers Insurance. So thank goodness that you had that.
Yes,
So everyone,
absolutely.
make sure go get your get your
And
insurance.
the errors and omissions insurance. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly, Oh, well, thank goodness now you're still here.
Yeah.
So they sold their business, so they started leaving you alone. At that point, was it your goal to sell the company, or did you know when you started Innovate MR that you wanted to sell your company?
That's a great question. Greg and I had been the ones who had started all of our businesses in the past. GoZing, USAMP, the file storage business. But in this company, in Innovate, Greg and I brought on a third partner, a friend of ours named George, who had worked with us in the past. So all three of us would be equal partners in this company. And on day one, I don't know if we were lucky or smart to have had a discussion about what an exit strategy looked like. Now, we had no business, no corporation, no revenue, nothing, but we sat down and we said, okay, when it becomes clear that the business is worth more than 100 million, we will seriously explore a sale. That was the discussion we had, and it was surprisingly confident. And I don't think any of us thought it was impossible. And it wasn't a joke conversation. It was a serious conversation. And that, so by 2021, when it became clear that the business was performing really well, and this was during COVID, that was a challenge, but bumpy road, but we survived that. And uh, we hired an investment banker in 2021 to go out and shop the company. Now, it didn't mean we were obligated to sell. We had to pay the banker some fees to get started, but that was the biggest risk we would take, and we would let them go out and talk to strategic and financial buyers to see if there was an interest.
And there was an interest.
And there were multiple companies that were interested in buying the business. And and it just became clear to the three of us that we were like, okay, I think we're doing this. I think this, this is the path we're on.
What do you think were the main factors that contributed to the growth of the company and the eventual sale?
I think we created systems that automated almost every aspect of the business to decrease errors from sales to project management, quality controls, data management, so that we could have some, standard operating procedures throughout the company. That's what I would call the kind of the foundation, concrete of the house. But then we built a a great brand, and that made it easier for the salespeople to go off and present the company. And we hired the right salespeople. We trained very junior salespeople into becoming successful. And we gave them the tools and the training to go out and know how to kind of attack the marketplace. Not how to speak poorly on the competition, but how to elevate our own brand and talk about why we're better than everyone else. And that worked. We never advertised at one trade show, and our industry was full of trade shows. Everyone would get booths and pay tens of thousands of dollars to send people to stand in a booth. We never did any of that. We went to conferences, we walked around, we networked, and we, promoted our brand, but we did things just differently than others. Again, it was our own money, so we weren't interested in. We wanted advertising and marketing dollars to have attribution and to be able to say that worked, that we can attribute that investment to something. So that's very hard with conference spending to attribute kind of ROI. So, and then, between kind of foundational tech, sales, we created very good database of assets of both consumers and business professionals. And we built tech solutions to weed out the bad apples in our database and to kind of allow the good apples to rise to the top. And essentially that was done through a scoring system where people were scored based on a whole host of attributes and tests, quizzes, and things they had to do online in order for us to prove that they were worthy of handing them over to take our client surveys.
And to avoid all the bots.
Oh, that's a big problem, especially when you're rewarding people with money or points. We have had bot farms from Venezuela, from China. People have figured out how to create racks and racks of cell phones and automate them to perform tasks. And each cell phone looks like a unique device on a different IP address, and very challenging to figure out. But we put in tests that were, not exactly CAPTCHA, but tests that only humans could answer. And we wrote our own code for that and built our own algorithms to figure out, who was good and who was bad. And it's not just, if someone might look good based on a whole set of attributes, but when you ask them a question and they go to type it in, is it logical? Does it make sense? Is the answer does it relate to the question? This was all pre-ChatGPT. So I haven't been at the company, although I'm a board member and a minority shareholder, I haven't been at the company through the evolution of ChatGPT over the last year and a half. So that is probably proving to be even more challenging for them, because now chat smarter chatbots can answer questions more eloquently than ever before. And I'm not exactly sure what they're doing, but I'm sure they figured out some things to mitigate that.
You also alluded to making sure that people were the right culture fit. Did you have a great culture and did you build that proactively?
We did, and it was harder in Innovate actually. GoZing and USAMP were centered around offices. USAMP had office in Los Angeles and London and Texas and Connecticut. And, we could go around to these offices and we could kind of propagate that culture. But Innovate was very remote. Pre-COVID, we were remote. We had one small office in Calabasas here in Los Angeles, where we could kind of dictate the culture, and people would fly in and they'd see the office and they could kind of absorb the vibe. Uh, but we had to, promote the culture over Zoom, even pre-COVID. So I think we did a good job at that. It was a little bit harder to manage. A little bit, it was much harder to manage actually than USAMP, where you could see people and kind of feel the vibe and tension.
But with Innovate MR, you had some tangible assets that made your, I guess, EBITDA, what I think you mentioned 14x EBITDA, is how much you sold it for, which is exponential. Do you know what contributed to that? Was it timing, 2021?
I think it was timing. It was before the interest rates spiked in 2022. So borrowing was more cost affordable, was more affordable than after we sold, when interest rates spiked up. So, and the business was both growing at a fast rate and maintained very high, gross margins and EBITDA margins, and was spitting off a lot of cash. So I think that made it very attractive. And we ended up selling it to a private equity firm, and that I think that and a number of other things made it a very attractive to them.
And
We had all,
Mhm. What?
oh, sorry, we had also decided that we didn't necessarily want to work for a new buyer of our business, the three founders. That anyone who's founded a company knows that working for someone else is really hard. And we just decided we weren't going to like play the game of, sure, we'll all get along. I'll be the CEO and we'll go to board meetings. And no, we decided it was actually just better. We took someone inside the company who was our most senior executive and had been with us through multiple companies, and we promoted her to CEO. And her, along with the COO, were pretty much the ones that were interviewed and answered all the questions through due diligence about the business. And it was through that process that the buyers became comfortable with them as the executive team. And now we were just the shareholders selling our shares.
That is so smart because I know so many people who are in the business. They've got a 5-year plan to get what, four times more. And it's a struggle. They're literally like crossing the dates out in the calendar. And one of them actually bought her company back
Mm,
because it was excruciating from
yeah,
a person that we both know from 7 Arrows. Anyway, but we can talk about that later. But yeah, it's
yeah,
tough. You're smart.
yeah. We didn't have to sell the company. There was no pressure. It, we were not going to do an earnout because we were not going to be working there. But we would so we took a majority in cash and then a small amount of shares, and we would ride with the shares through till their next exit.
So is a PE company planning to do like an IPO or do you know what
I,
their plans are?
I'm not 100% sure. I don't think there's a plan to go public, but I do think that, you know, look, every investor wants to hold an asset for a certain period of time, and then, they have investors themselves that are looking for profits. And so at some point they will sell it to some other strategic or investor, I would imagine.
Yeah. And then during this whole time when you were a CEO, you were still so creative. I remember you got a BMW, a vintage BMW, and then you made a film out of it. Like, and you also had like this exhibition. Like, we would always talk about creative stuff, and I didn't know about your market research company. Like, we just would talk art. And so now that you've sold your business, you have this new venture. What lessons did you take away from your experience as a tech CEO that you apply today to your work as a fine art photographer?
Well, in 2015, when right after Innovate had started, I started more actively taking photos. And I hoped that one day we would sell the company. And I hoped that I would then dedicate my time to photography full time. And so starting in 2015, I started taking pictures and I wasn't very critical of myself. And I thought, this is just all practice. Everything I'm doing is a stepping stone towards getting better. And I see photography as, business is a business challenge also. It's getting the right composition, creating the right story, finding the right subjects, post-processing, editing them in a way that your eye, thinks that it looks good that way. But I find that most photographers, the vast majority, have an Instagram page, and then they have a website that is pretty much a big brochure. And I had that until, a few months ago, where you just upload your photos and it's Matt Dusig photography, and here's all my pretty photos. Take a look. And oh, by the way, prints are available, which means contact me, shoot me an email if you want to buy something, and I'll then tell you what it costs, framed, unframed, acrylic mounted, things like that. And so I got to a point, and this was last year, that I thought I need to level up the business. I need to treat this as a real business now. And I need to think of all the kind of tech and product solutions that I've learned in the past. I can't just, go out, take pictures, and keep hosting them on my website. Yes, I could do that, but that wasn't enough for me. I feel like I have to, whether I need the money or not, it's not about that. I feel like I have an obligation to turn this into a true business with a full e-commerce solution and make it easy for people to buy, my art. So I've been investing all year in investing in HubSpot to help kind of manage customers and customer emails and CRM, while integrating with Shopify to create, shopping carts and products, and being able to segment your products by, these are all the blue images. These are all the ones that have mountains. These are the ones that have surfers. These are the ones that have horses. These are horses, but they're from Canada and they include the color pink. Like all sorts of things I've been doing to really create an easy to use e-commerce platform. And I love that side of the business. So for the last few months, I haven't been taking a lot of photos since probably August, but I have been working day in, day out on kind of the management of this business and the kind of the production side, which is really fun for me too.
Why horses?
Mm. My daughter started riding when she was very young. And so I ended up being around the barn a lot. And you ready for the irony? Is that I'm allergic to horses.
Whoa, I didn't know that.
Right. I'm allergic to horses and I take pictures of horses. How could that be? But so I just started taking lots of pictures. And then eventually I found my way going out to some wild horse, reservations where, wild horses have been brought in from the wild and are kind of cared for, on private land.
Mm.
And they're wild. They run around on thousands of acres, but there eventually is a fence line where they have to stop. Um, and I really found it peaceful. And there was a real Zen moment of being out in a field of horses and really you've got to focus all your attention, not only on the capturing the subject, but making sure you don't get run over. So you can't be out there staring at your cell phone. And it's even better if you're off the grid and there's no cell coverage. And after taking those pictures, that was at a location called Return to Freedom, and they protect and save wild horses. Most people don't know, but there's over 80,000 wild horses and burros in the United States right now.
Wow.
They run free on government federal public land that's managed by the Bureau of Land Management, the BLM. And most of this land there's some in California, Oregon, most of it is in Nevada, Wyoming. You can find wild horses on the shores of Assateague and Chickateague out by, I think it's Virginia. And I just started going out and saying, I'm going to go look for wild horses. One of the most magical places I went to was along the Salt River. You just fly into Phoenix, drive towards Mesa, Arizona. The Salt River runs through Phoenix, but this is on the outskirts of town. And right on the river are just horses living, breeding, playing in the river, on the shores. And again, super magical. So from a business standpoint, now I've also take pictures of all sorts of I do aerial photography, landscapes, like you said, of Hawaii, a lot of aerial photography of Los Angeles and other places around the world. But one, I love taking pictures of horses. I love the challenge of finding that one great moment, capturing that moment in time. And even better if no one else in the world saw that moment happen, it was only me. And I decided, though, that it was important to brand myself as the horse guy. Because I think while I can still go out and be a jack of all trades and do whatever I want, I think it's really important for any business to be known for something. Innovate was known for great data quality and high levels of customer service. And Matt Dusig, Fine Art Photography, I want it to be branded as mostly as wild and domestic horses.
I think it's so true for you, everyone who's listening as an entrepreneur to focus on a target audience because, as you know, Coca-Cola doesn't even market to everyone. Coca-Cola products are not in Whole Foods, right? Are you
Mm.
are you drinking a
Those-
Coca-Cola?
um, is this Coca-Cola? It's
Is it
Sprite. It is Coca-Cola.
it is a Coca-Cola
It's a Coke
product.
product. Well, they targeted me.
Right. So even though you are a billion-dollar company, they still focus on who they really want. Do you know that cough medicine Triminic?
Yeah,
Do you know who their target audience is?
no idea.
Just guess. You're an entrepreneur.
People over 60,
Try again.
kids.
So
Uh,
I think it's Procter and Gamble that owns it, and their target audience is first-time moms with newborns.
okay, interesting.
Do you know why?
No.
Because if a mom who's a new mom can trust a weird sounding cough medicine with their newborn, their precious newborn, guess what they're going to give to their second and their third child and their husband.
Mm.
So just like you focusing on horses, yes, you can do drone photography, don't drone aerials over Oahu, but
Mm.
horses, is what you want to focus on.
Yeah, and it's taken me to some really great locations. And this summer, I went to an island off the coast of Nova Scotia, and the island is called Sable Island. There's no land. It's actually just a sandbar in the ocean. There's no trees. And the island is about 25 miles long and 3/4 of a mile wide. So it's just a narrow strip of sand in the Atlantic. And it's home to 300 plus shipwrecks over the last hundreds of years. And along the way, sailors were shipwrecked on Sable Island. And eventually, various countries started setting up life-saving stations there in preparation for another shipwreck. And over time, horses were brought to the island, either through the shipwrecks or by people that were coming to settle the island. And over time, it became clear that the island was not really habitable. And it eventually became the property of Canada and then was eventually turned into a national park of Canada. So now only temporary park employees live on the island. And in order to get to the island, you have to be invited. If you want to stay there for any length of time, which I did, I stayed there for almost a week. And once you're there, there's no cell phones, there's no cell towers, there's no restaurants. There's just you have a bed and a room and a kitchen. And every day you go out into the sand and there's hundreds and hundreds of wild horses just roaming this island, surviving on their own. A very magical place. So, focusing on horses and continues to lead me to really interesting places. And I have lists of other places that I want to, go explore as well.
Do you have a favorite piece from Sable Island that you've created?
Oh, I have a few. Yeah. Yeah.
There's
Uh,
one I'm thinking of. There's another animal that's on the island. Seal?
oh yeah. I mean, that's for sure. So there were two horses walking on the beach as they do. The horses are spread all over this island. They're either on the beach or they're in the sand dunes or they're in the tall grass along the dunes. That's pretty much all there is sand and dunes. But two horses were walking along the beach and they came across a gray seal. Sable Island is home to the largest breeding ground in the world of seals. And although this was summer, there were only about 50,000 or so seals surrounding the island. In the winter, during, I guess, mating season, you call it, there are hundreds of thousands of seals that surround the island. So this one seal climbed very, very far from the shore and was just walking or waddling through the sand and came across these two horses. And I have these two great shots. One is where all three of them, the two horses and the seal, are all looking right at me. And then after that happened, one of the horses became curious and walked up to the seal while the seal looked up at it, barking with its mouth open and teeth showing, barking at the horse. Of course, the horse looks happy, curious, like, hey, friend. And the seal's like, get off my beach. Really cute. I love that. I love those two photos.
That's one of my favorite. It is
I have
amazing.
I have so many favorites, but I have another favorite where I waited patiently for this one horse that was grazing off of the grasses, and there was a field of flowers, and I was just kind of hunkered down in the grass myself at a very low level, watching this horse graze, and all of a sudden its nose came face to face with this beautiful pink flower, and got this shot of this flower and the horse and its mane falling down over its head. Really beautiful.
Gorgeous. Absolutely gorgeous. What advice would you give to entrepreneurs who want to follow passion like you, but are hesitant, to take the leap?
I think it's either in you to take the leap or not. Some people are meant to just have the safety net of a job and a career and a boss and a paycheck and a career path. And other people are just comfortable with risk. So if you're one of those people that's in a day job and you dream about being an entrepreneur, you dream about owning your own business or doing something, then you're kind of set up for it already because you're already looking for that opportunity. But it's hard to do unless you have the financial backing to take that risk, because you're not just going to quit your day job and go into Upwork and hire some engineers and build something. And you need some
Chutzpah.
money. You need some chutzpah, but you need some
Chutzpah.
money,
Moxie.
moxie, money to take risks and to develop and to have a chance at success. But the best advice for starting any business is to have at least one customer that's willing to pay you, even while you're freelancing or while you're working your day job. You're also building some kind of new tech solution, and if you can get that one customer on board, then you can build from there. It's a lot harder to start from scratch, and I, in USAMP was venture funded, fueled with 4 rounds of venture capital, and the growth was significant, but it wasn't organic. It was real growth. And at Innovate, we decided it doesn't matter how fast we grow. What matters is that we build the business that can scale, so it has all the right pieces in place to scale, and is profitable, extremely profitable along the way. And it's an old school business mentality. Let's build a business and we will only grow it out of profits. Now, we had to get scrappy because we ended up, going to our bank, and every time we invoiced a client, we financed that receivable so that we could get 80% of our money immediately from the bank and not have to wait 90 days for our clients to pay us. And so we were financing thousands and thousands of invoices and receivables just to get the business to the point where we no longer had to do that anymore. We no longer needed lines of credit, and the business was self-sustaining.
And it worked out.
Yeah.
Good job. So now when you look at how you've evolved over the years, starting off as someone who graduated with a graphic degree in design, how has your perspective on success evolved over the years?
I mean, I think I always dreamt that success was just about how much money you could make. And how much money can you make, and, can you become quote unquote rich, whatever that means.
Or have FU money? Weren't you
FU
the one
money.
who told me that?
But really what it means is I don't think it's a number. I think it's freedom. It's once you have enough money where your money can make money for you, and that growth, either interest growth or dividends or capital gain or appreciation, can increase your wealth greater than your spending. That's success to me. That's it. And it'll be different for every person.
Amazing. Where can people find your work and how can they connect with you?
Yeah. So my website for my photography is just my last name, dusig.com, Dusig.com. And of course, I'm on LinkedIn, Instagram, Facebook, all the usual places. Happy to connect on LinkedIn.
And what's your not perfect, but like target audience when it comes to selling your photography and your art?
Well, right now it's kind of an equine horse community. It's people that just love horses. And it's really a wide range. I have some clients that just have, 4-year-old daughters that are obsessed with horses. And that's all they want to read, and that's all they want to talk about. And they want pictures on their wall. And I have other people that are looking to, decorate their living room. I've worked with interior designers, and most of those interior designers are working in kind of Western style spaces, or people that have an appreciation for just horses in general, or so that's pretty much my target audience. I'm continuing to refine it, but that's pretty much it.
Hotels and resorts.
It can be. Actually, I am targeting ranch type resorts, dude ranches, and places like that.
Yes, so exciting. Someone do a retreat there and we'll see your photography there.
Right, right. Yeah.
Amazing. Thank you so much for spending so much time with us and sharing your incredible, intelligent risk journey.
Mhm.
And
Thank
love hearing your story. I'm excited to see what's next for you.
Awesome. I appreciate it. This has been fun.
Thanks, Matt.
Thank you.